My name is Margaret, I'm 67 years old. And the day my husband refused to care for my twins while I was being taken into surgery was the day my heart completely broke. I was terrified. The pain in my abdomen had become unbearable, like someone was twisting a knife inside me, over and over again. I was being wheeled toward the operating room, not knowing if I'd wake up, not knowing if I'd ever see my babies again. And in that moment, when I needed him most, when I begged him to just be there for our children, he looked at me with cold, empty eyes and said no. Felt abandoned. Completely and utterly abandoned. Like I was nothing. Like our family was nothing. And then my ex-husband walked in. The man I thought I'd never see again. The man whose face I'd tried so hard to forget. He walked through those hospital doors, and I'll never forget the looks on everyone's faces when he spoke. The shock. The fear. The absolute silence that filled that room. Before I tell you what happened, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below where you're watching from. Your support means everything to me. My name is Margaret, and I'm 67 years old. I never thought I'd be telling this story, but I need to get it out. I need people to understand what happened to me, what was done to me by someone I trusted with my entire life. I have twins. 2 beautiful 8-year-old children who came into my life late. Unexpected, like miracles. After my divorce, I thought I was done with family life. I thought I was done with marriage. Done with trusting anyone that deeply ever again. But then I met Robert. He seemed kind. He seemed gentle. He seemed like everything my ex-husband wasn't. And when I got pregnant at 59 against all odds, he promised me he'd be there. He promised me we'd be a family. The twins, Emma and Michael, they're everything to me. Everything. They're the reason I wake up every morning. They're the reason I keep going even when my body aches. Even when the exhaustion seeps into my bones. Being an older mother isn't easy. My energy isn't what it used to be. My health isn't what it used to be. But I love them with every fiber of my being, and I would die for them without a second thought. Robert became my husband when the twins were 2 years old. He seemed to love them. He seemed to love me. He'd hold them, read them stories, kiss their foreheads at night. I thought I'd finally found someone who would stand by me. Someone who would be there through thick and thin. Someone who understood that family meant sacrifice. That love meant showing up even when it's hard. My ex-husband, Thomas, he's been out of the picture for years. We divorced when I was 55 after 30 years of marriage. It was complicated, painful, messy like all divorces are. We had our reasons I won't get into right now, but we went our separate ways. I haven't seen him much since then. Maybe once or twice at family events. Awkward encounters where we'd nod politely and avoid eye contact. I thought that chapter of my life was closed forever. Life hasn't been easy. It hasn't been the fairy tale I hoped for with Robert. The twins have special needs, you see. Emma has severe anxiety and needs constant reassurance. Michael has autism and requires structure, routine, patience that most people don't have. They depend on me for everything. Getting them ready in the morning takes 2 hours. Bedtime is a 3-hour process of routines and rituals they absolutely cannot deviate from. Doctor's appointments, therapy sessions, school meetings, it never stops. Robert knew all of this when we got married. He said he was ready. He said he understood. He said he wanted to be their father. I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. I thought I had a partner. I thought I had someone who would catch me if I fell. I thought I'd finally found a man who wouldn't abandon me when things got difficult. Who wouldn't run away when life got messy and complicated and hard. I was so wrong. So heartbreakingly, devastatingly wrong. Started 6 months ago. A dull ache in my lower abdomen that I tried to ignore. My age, something always hurts. You learn to live with pain, to push through it, to tell yourself it's just part of getting older. But this pain, it got worse. It started waking me up at night, sharp and stabbing like something inside me was tearing apart. I finally went to the doctor after I collapsed in the kitchen while making breakfast for the twins. Emma found me on the floor, and the terror in her little face, the way she screamed for Robert, I'll never forget it. That's when I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. The tests came back, and my doctor sat me down with that look on his face. You know the look. The one that says your life is about to change. He told me I had a large ovarian cyst, about the size of a grapefruit, and it was wrapped around my fallopian tube. It was causing internal bleeding. It needed to come out immediately. Surgery. Major abdominal surgery. At 67 years old. He explained the risks in that calm, clinical voice doctors use when they're trying not to scare you but need you to understand the seriousness. There could be complications. My age, anesthesia itself was risky. My recovery would be long, painful, difficult. I need help for weeks, maybe months. I wouldn't be able to lift anything, wouldn't be able to take care of myself, let alone 2 special needs children. And then he said the words that made my blood run cold. Margaret, I need you to understand that this surgery, while necessary, carries significant risks. There's a chance you might not wake up. I sat there in his office, and I felt my entire world crumbling. Not wake up. Not wake up to see my babies grow up. Not wake up to tuck them in at night, to hear Emma's laugh, to see Michael's smile when he finally makes eye contact with me. The fear was overwhelming. Consumed me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw myself on that operating table, slipping away, leaving my children motherless. They'd already lost so much time with me because of my age. What if they lost me entirely? But the pain kept getting worse. 2 weeks after that appointment, I was in agony. Constant, unrelenting agony. Could barely move. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I lost 15 pounds in 10 days. My skin turned gray. My hands shook constantly. The doctor called and said we couldn't wait any longer. The cyst was growing. The bleeding was getting worse. If we didn't operate soon, it could rupture, and then I'd be in even more danger. He scheduled the surgery for the following week. 1 week. I had 1 week to get my affairs in order, to prepare my children, to make sure everything would be okay if I didn't come home. I was terrified. Absolutely terrified. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat, my heart racing, convinced I was going to die. I'd go into the twins' room and watch them sleep, tears streaming down my face, memorizing every detail of their faces, the way Emma curled up with her stuffed rabbit, the way Michael always kicked off his blankets. I was weak. Physically weak from the blood loss, from the lack of sleep, from the constant pain. Emotionally weak from the fear, from the uncertainty. From feeling like I was standing on the edge of a cliff and one wrong step would send me plummeting into darkness. But most of all, I was worried about my twins. What would happen to them if I didn't survive? Who would understand Emma's anxiety? Who would know that she needs exactly 3 goodnight kisses? Not 2, not 4, but 3. Who would understand Michael's routine? Who would know that his toast needs to be cut diagonally, never straight across, or he won't eat it? I lay in bed the night before the surgery, my hand on my abdomen where that monster was growing inside me, and I prayed. I prayed harder than I'd ever prayed in my life. I prayed for the strength to survive. I prayed for the skill of the surgeon's hands. I prayed for my children to be okay, no matter what happened to me. 3 days before the surgery, I sat Robert down. We were in the living room after the twins had finally gone to bed. It had taken me 2.5 hours to get them settled that night, and I was exhausted, in pain, barely able to stand. I looked at my husband, the man I'd chosen to spend the rest of my life with, the man who'd promised to be there for me and my children, and I asked him for help. "Robert," I said, my voice shaking, "I need you." I explained everything to him. I told him how scared I was. I showed him the papers the hospital had given me, the consent forms that listed all the things that could go wrong. I told him the surgery would take at least 4 hours. I told him I'd be in recovery for several more hours after that. I told him I'd need to stay in the hospital for at least 3 days, maybe longer depending on how my body responded. "I need you to take care of Emma and Michael," I said. "I need you to be there for them while I'm in surgery. I need you to keep them safe, keep them calm, stick to their routines. Can you do that? Please, Robert, can you do that for me? For us." I trusted him. Despite everything, despite the small ways he'd disappointed me over the years, the times he'd been impatient with the twins, the times he'd complained about how much work they were, I trusted that when it really mattered, when I really needed him, he would step up. I believed in him. I believed in our marriage vows. In sickness and in health. For better or worse. Those words had to mean something. They had to. You just need to be there, I said, tears streaming down my face. You just need to keep them safe for a few days. That's all I'm asking. I'll have my sister come help after I'm out of surgery, but during the operation, I just need to know they're with you. I need to know they're okay. I looked into his eyes, searching for reassurance, searching for love, searching for the man I thought I'd married. Please, I whispered. Please, Robert. I'm so scared. I'm so scared of leaving them. I need to know they'll be taken care of. I need to know you'll be there. I reached for his hand. It was cold. He didn't squeeze back. But I told myself it was fine. He was probably just stressed. Probably worried about me. Probably trying to be strong. I told myself that when the moment came, he'd be there. He'd show up. He'd prove to me that I'd made the right choice in marrying him. I told myself that love would win. That family would win. That he wouldn't let me down when I needed him most. I was so naive. So desperately, heartbreakingly naive. The night before my surgery, I could barely breathe. The fear was suffocating me. I packed my hospital bag with shaking hands, putting in comfortable clothes for after the surgery, my phone charger, a picture of the twins I wanted to keep next to my bed. I went to Robert one more time. One final time. I needed to hear him say it. I needed to hear him promise me he'd be there. Tomorrow morning, I said. The surgery is at 8 a.m. I need to be at the hospital by 6. Can you take care of the twins? Can you get them ready for school, stick to their routine, make sure they're okay? And that's when he said it. No. Just like that. One word. Cold. Final. Absolute. What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What do you mean no? I mean no, Margaret. Can't do it. I have work tomorrow. I have an important meeting at 10. I can't just drop everything because you're having surgery. The room started spinning. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. Robert, I'm having major surgery. Could die. Did you not hear anything the doctor said? Need you. The twins need you. He shrugged. She shrugged. Like I was asking him to pick up groceries, not to take care of his family during a medical emergency. You're being dramatic, he said. You'll be fine. Lots of people have surgery. You'll be in and out, and then you'll be back to normal. I don't see why I need to disrupt my entire day for this. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. The pain of his words was worse than the physical pain I'd been enduring for months. Disrupt your day. My voice was rising. Disrupt your day. Robert, I might not wake up from this surgery. I might die on that table. And you're worried about a meeting. Don't be so dramatic, he said again, his voice annoyed now. You're not going to die. And even if something did happen, which it won't, your sister can take care of the twins. I don't see why this has to be my problem. My problem. He called his family his problem. What about Emma and Michael? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. What about your children? They're going to be terrified. They need routine, they need stability. You know this, Robert. You know how they are. He rolled his eyes. Actually rolled his eyes at me. They're not my children, Margaret. They're yours. I never signed up for this level of responsibility. I thought when I married you we'd have a normal life. But instead I got 2 kids with problems who need constant attention. And a wife who's always tired and sick. This isn't what I wanted. The words hit me like bullets. Each one tearing through me, shredding my heart into pieces. Not your children, I whispered. You've been in their lives since they were 2 years old. You married me knowing they existed. You said you loved them. You said you wanted to be their father. I said a lot of things, he replied, his voice cold, emotionless. People say things to make relationships work. But I'm done pretending. I'm done playing house with someone else's damaged kids. I'm done with all of this. I couldn't breathe. I literally couldn't breathe. The shock was overwhelming. This man I'd trusted, This man I'd let into my life, into my children's lives, was abandoning us. Right when we needed him most. "Robert, please," I begged. I actually got down on my knees in pain, weak, and I begged. "Please don't do this. Please don't abandon us. I'm begging you. I'm literally begging you to just be there for one day. Just one day. Please." He looked down at me with disgust. With actual disgust. "Get up, Margaret. You're embarrassing yourself. I'm going to bed. I have to be up early for my meeting. Figure it out yourself. You always do." And then he walked away. He walked away from me, kneeling on the floor, crying, begging him not to abandon his family. I stayed there on the floor for I don't know how long. An hour. 2 hours. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. I couldn't process what had just happened. I couldn't believe my own husband was abandoning us. I couldn't believe that the man I'd chosen to spend my life with, the man I'd trusted with my children, was showing me his true colors at the worst possible moment. The heartbreak was unbearable. It was a physical pain worse than the cyst, worse than anything I'd ever felt. It was the pain of betrayal, of broken trust, of shattered dreams. I'd been wrong about him. So completely, devastatingly wrong. The morning of the surgery, I barely remember getting ready. Everything was a fog. I moved like a robot going through the motions, but inside I was shattered. Robert had already left for work. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't even look at me. I had to wake the twins and tell them I was going to the hospital. Emma cried. She clung to me, her little fingers digging into my arms, begging me not to go. "Mommy, don't leave," she sobbed. "Please don't leave. I'm scared." "I'm scared too, baby," I whispered, holding her as tight as I could despite the pain. "But I have to do this. I have to get better so I can take care of you." Michael didn't cry. He just rocked back and forth, humming his comfort song, not making eye contact. I knew he was terrified too, but he couldn't express it the way Emma could. I called my sister in a panic. She lived 2 hours away, but she dropped everything and said she'd come get the twins and take them to school, then bring them to the hospital after to see me. But that meant for the next few hours until she could get there, my children would be alone. 2 special needs 8-year-olds alone in the house, because their stepfather was too selfish to take one day off work. I had to leave them. I had no choice. The hospital had called and said I needed to come in immediately. My blood work from the day before had shown I was losing more blood than they realized. They needed to operate now. The Uber ride to the hospital is burned into my memory. I sat in the back seat, texting my sister, giving her instructions about the twins' routines, where their medications were, what they needed for school, how to calm Emma down if she had an anxiety attack, what to do if Michael got overwhelmed. I was sobbing so hard the driver kept asking if I was okay. I couldn't even answer him. When I got to the hospital, I was a mess. They took me to pre-op, and I sat there in that freezing room, in that horrible gown that doesn't close in the back, surrounded by beeping machines and the smell of antiseptic, and I felt more alone than I'd ever felt in my entire life. A nurse came in to start my 4, and she took one look at my face and asked, "Honey, where's your family? Is someone here with you?" "No," I whispered. "No one's here. Not even your husband." I couldn't even answer. I just shook my head and started crying again. She held my hand. This stranger, this nurse whose name I don't even remember, held my hand and told me it would be okay. She lied, of course. She had no idea if it would be okay. But I needed to hear it. The anesthesiologist came in to explain what would happen. I barely heard him. All I could think about was my twins at home, alone, probably scared, and my husband at his precious meeting, not giving a damn about any of us. They wheeled me toward the operating room and I was in pain. Physical pain from the cyst that was destroying my body, but the emotional pain was so much worse. I felt betrayed. Felt abandoned. I felt like I was nothing, like my life meant nothing, like my children meant nothing. I didn't know what would happen to the twins if I didn't wake up. I didn't know who would take care of them. Robert clearly wouldn't. My sister would do her best, but she had her own life, her own family. The twins needed someone who understood them, who loved them unconditionally, who would fight for them the way I fought for them every single day. As they wheeled me down that hallway, I felt hopeless. Completely and utterly hopeless. I was about to go under anesthesia, about to let strangers cut me open, and I had no idea if I'd ever wake up. And if I did wake up, I'd be waking up to a broken marriage, to a man who'd shown me he never really loved me or my children at all. I closed my eyes as they moved me onto the operating table, and I prayed one more time. I prayed for my children. I prayed that someone somewhere would protect them. I prayed that they'd be okay, even if I wasn't. The last thing I remember before the anesthesia took me under was the anesthesiologist's voice counting backwards from 10, and the overwhelming feeling that I was completely, utterly alone. What I'm about to tell you, I didn't witness myself. I was unconscious, on an operating table, fighting for my life. But my sister was there. She told me everything, every single detail. And when she did, I cried for 3 hours straight. My sister Linda, she got to my house about 30 minutes after I'd left for the hospital. She found Emma and Michael exactly as I'd feared, terrified and confused, with Emma in full panic mode and Michael rocking in the corner of his room, his hands over his ears. Linda got them calmed down, got them ready, took them to school. She explained to their teachers what was happening, asked them to be extra patient and gentle with them today. And then she drove straight to the hospital to be there for me during the surgery. She got there about 7:30 a.m., 30 minutes before my surgery was scheduled to start. She checked in at the desk, told them she was my sister, asked where I was. They directed her to the pre-op area. But before she could get to me, before she could see me, something happened that changed everything. The automatic doors to the hospital entrance slid open, and Thomas walked in. My ex-husband. The man I hadn't seen in years. The man I'd divorced, cut out of my life, tried so hard to move on from. Thomas, walking through those hospital doors like he had every right to be there. Linda said she froze. She literally froze in the middle of the hallway, staring at him in complete shock. He saw her, made eye contact, nodded, and kept walking toward the information desk. Linda ran over to him. "Thomas, what are you doing here? How did you even know about this?" He looked at her, and Linda said his face was set in a way she'd never seen before. Determined, almost angry but controlled. "Emma called me," he said simply. "What? Emma called you? How? Why?" Thomas pulled out his phone and showed Linda. There were 3 missed calls from my home number early that morning before I'd left. And then a voicemail. He played it for Linda, and she said she started crying right there in the hospital lobby. It was Emma's voice, small and terrified and breaking. "Grandpa Thomas. It's Emma. Mommy's going to the hospital for surgery and she's really scared and she says she might not wake up and Robert left and we're all alone and I don't know what to do. Mommy's really sick and I'm really scared. Please, can you help us? Please." Thomas had driven 2 hours from his home the moment he got that message. Didn't hesitate. Didn't question it. Just got in his car and drove. "Where is she?" he asked Linda. "Where's Margaret?" "She's in pre-op. Surgery starts in 20 minutes. "Thomas, what are you doing? Why are you here?" "Those are my grandchildren," he said, his voice hard. "Emma called me. She asked for help. And Margaret is going into surgery alone, terrified, abandoned by that piece of trash she married. I'm here to fix this." Linda said people in the lobby had started to stare. Thomas's voice had risen, and there was an intensity to him that made people nervous. "Thomas, I don't think Margaret wants to see you right now. She's been through enough. She doesn't need more stress." "I'm not here to cause stress," he said. "I'm here to make sure she's not alone. I'm here to make sure someone is fighting for her and those kids. Now, are you going to take me to her? Or do I need to find her myself?" Linda hesitated. She told me later she didn't know what to do. She knew our history was complicated. She knew seeing Thomas might upset me. But she also knew I was alone, terrified, abandoned, and about to go into life-threatening surgery. So she made a decision. "Follow me," she said. They walked through the maze of hospital corridors together, Linda leading the way, Thomas following close behind. Linda said the energy coming off him was almost frightening. She'd known Thomas for over 30 years, since I'd first married him, and she'd never seen him like this. They got to the pre-op area, and the nurse at the desk tried to stop them. "I'm sorry, but we can only allow one visitor back at a time, and visiting hours are very limited before surgery." Thomas didn't even slow down. "I'm her family," he said, not asking, just stating. "I'm going back there." Something in his voice must have convinced the nurse not to argue. She buzzed them through. They found my curtained area. Linda pulled back the curtain. And there I was, lying on the gurney, for in my arm, hospital gown on, my face swollen from crying, looking like I'd given up on everything. I saw Linda first. Relief flooded through me. At least someone was here. At least I wasn't completely alone. And then I saw him, Thomas, standing there, in my pre-op room. The last person on earth I expected to see. Linda said I went white. Completely white. Like I'd seen a ghost. "Thomas," I whispered. "What are you doing here?" Before he could answer, before anyone could say anything else, we heard a commotion at the nurse's station. Loud voices, angry voices, someone demanding to be let through. And then Robert burst into the pre-op area. My husband. The man who'd abandoned me. The man who said his meeting was more important than his family. He'd seen Thomas's car in the parking lot, recognized it, and had come to see what was going on. The tension in that small curtained area became suffocating. Robert stared at Thomas. Thomas stared back. Linda stood between them, looking like she might need to physically separate two men in a hospital pre-op area. I couldn't breathe. I literally couldn't breathe. The heart monitor I was connected to started beeping faster, the numbers going up, and a nurse poked her head in looking concerned. "What's going on in here?" she demanded. "We're trying to prep a patient for surgery. This is not the time or place for." "I'll tell you what's going on," Thomas said, his voice cutting through everything like a knife. "I'll tell you exactly what's going on." The room went completely silent. Everyone stared at him. Thomas stepped closer to my bed, ignoring Robert completely, and looked down at me. His eyes were different than I remembered. Older, lighter, but also stronger somehow. "Margaret," he said softly, "I'm here. I'm here for you. And I'm here for Emma and Michael. And I'm not going anywhere." And then he turned to face Robert, and the look on his face made even me, lying in that hospital bed, feel afraid. Thomas stood there, looking at Robert with an expression I can only describe as controlled fury. Linda said later she'd never seen anyone hold that much anger in check while still radiating absolute authority. Robert spoke first, his voice defensive, aggressive. "What the hell are you doing here, Thomas? You have no right to be here. Margaret is my wife. This is a family matter." Family matter. Thomas's voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a blade. "You want to talk to me about family? This has nothing to do with you," Robert shot back. "You need to leave. Now." "I'm not going anywhere." Thomas took a step forward. Robert actually stepped back. "See, here's what's going to happen. You're going to stand there and listen to what I have to say, and you're going to listen carefully, because your entire life is about to change." I tried to speak, tried to tell them both to stop, that this wasn't the time, but my voice came out as barely a whisper. The nurse was still standing there, hand on her pager, looking like she was about to call security. Thomas held up his hand. "Give me 2 minutes," he said to the nurse. "Just 2 minutes, and then I promise this will be resolved." Something in his voice made her nod and step back. But she didn't leave. Thomas turned his attention back to Robert. When he spoke, his voice was calm, measured, terrifying in its control. "This morning, at approximately 6:47 a.m., my granddaughter Emma called me. She's 8 years old. She was home alone with her brother, terrified, because her mother had to go to the hospital for emergency surgery. She called me crying, begging for help, because you, her stepfather, the man who's supposed to protect her, abandoned her to go to a meeting." "Now wait just a..." Robert started. "I'm not finished." Thomas's voice didn't rise, but the authority in it made Robert's mouth snap shut. "Emma and Michael are my grandchildren. Not biologically, I'll grant you that. Margaret and I were divorced before she had them. But I've known those children since they were born. I've sent them birthday presents every year. I've called on holidays. I've stayed in their lives, even from a distance, because they're Margaret's children. And I will always care about Margaret and anyone she loves. I felt tears streaming down my face. I didn't know any of this. I didn't know he'd been keeping track of the twins, staying in their lives in small ways. I thought he'd forgotten about us completely. Thomas continued, his eyes never leaving Robert's face. This morning when Emma called me terrified and alone, I got in my car and drove 2 hours to get here. Not because I want anything from Margaret. Not because I'm trying to get back together with her. Not because I have any ulterior motive whatsoever. I came because a child asked for help, and because the woman I was married to for 30 years is going into surgery alone and scared because her current husband is a coward. Robert's face had gone red. You have no idea what you're talking about. You don't know anything about our marriage or our family. I know enough. Thomas pulled out his phone. I know that 3 weeks ago Emma called me again. Did you know that, Margaret? I shook my head. Had no idea. She called me crying because you, Robert, told her she was too much work. Those were your exact words. You're too much work, and I'm tired of dealing with you. She's 8 years old, and you told her she was too much work. I felt like I'd been stabbed. Emma had never told me this. She'd been carrying that pain alone. Thomas's voice got quieter, which somehow made it even more frightening. I know that last month Michael had a meltdown at school, and the school called you to come pick him up because Margaret was at a doctor's appointment. And you told the school you were busy and they'd have to figure it out themselves. An 8-year-old boy with autism having a meltdown, and you couldn't be bothered to leave work for an hour to help him. Robert was starting to look pale. How do you? The school counselor called me, Thomas said simply. She's a family friend, and she was horrified by your response. She asked if there was anyone else who could be an emergency contact for the children. So I am. As of 3 weeks ago, I'm on the emergency contact list for both Emma and Michael. Did you know that, Margaret? I couldn't speak. I just shook my head again. So let me tell you what's going to happen now, Thomas said, and his voice had dropped to almost a whisper, which made everyone in the room lean in to hear. You're going to walk out of this hospital right now. You're going to go to your meeting since that's apparently so important to you. And you're not going to come back. Excuse me. Robert's voice was incredulous. You can't tell me what to do. Margaret is my wife. Margaret is your wife, Thomas agreed. For now. But I spent 30 years married to her, and I know her better than you ever will. And I know that when she wakes up from this surgery, when she's had time to think, when she's had time to process what you've done to her and those children, she's going to end this marriage. And you know what? I'm going to help her do it. You have no right. I have every right. Thomas's voice finally rose, just slightly, but the impact was devastating. Because while you were at your meeting, while you were abandoning your family, I spent the morning calling lawyers. My lawyers. The best divorce attorneys in the state. And they're ready. The moment Margaret is recovered enough to sign papers, we're filing for divorce on her behalf. Abandonment, neglect, emotional abuse. We have documentation of everything. The school records, the hospital records from today showing she came in alone. Emma's phone records showing her crying calls to me. We have it all. The room was dead silent. Robert's face had gone from red to white. But that's not all, Thomas continued. And now there was something almost dangerous in his voice. I also spent this morning making some calls about you, Robert. Did you know I still have connections in the business world? Did you know I know people at your company? Robert's eyes went wide. What did you do? I didn't do anything, Thomas said calmly. I just asked some questions. And what I found out was very interesting. I found out that this important meeting you have today, it's not a business meeting at all. It's a meeting with your mistress. The woman you've been seeing for the past 6 months. The woman you've been taking to hotels and restaurants while your wife has been homesick, taking care of children you promised to love. Gasp. The heart monitor started beeping faster. The nurse stepped forward, looking alarmed, but Linda held her back. Robert's face had gone completely white. "That's not, I don't know what you're." "Her name is Jessica," Thomas said, his voice cold as ice. "She's 34 years old. Works in marketing at your company. You've been telling Margaret you have late meetings and business trips, but you've been with Jessica, taking her to nice restaurants, buying her gifts, planning a future with her while your wife at home was dying." I couldn't breathe. The beeping on the heart monitor was going crazy now. The nurse rushed forward. "That's enough," she said firmly. "We need to get her into surgery now. Her vitals are all over the place. Everyone out. Now." But Thomas wasn't done. He turned back to Robert one last time. "Here's what else is going to happen," he said quietly. "I've already contacted Margaret's lawyer. We're freezing all joint accounts as of this morning. You won't be able to touch a penny of her money. I've also contacted a locksmith. By the time you get home tonight, the locks will be changed. Your belongings will be boxed up and waiting for you on the front porch. You're done. We're out. And if you try to fight this, if you try to make this difficult, I will make sure everyone at your company knows exactly what kind of man you are. I'll make sure Jessica knows you're still married. I'll make sure your boss knows you've been lying about your business trips. I'll destroy you, Robert. Completely and utterly destroy you." Robert just stood there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish, no words coming out. Thomas finally turned to me. His face softened, and for a moment, I saw the man I'd been married to for 30 years. The man I'd loved. The man who, despite our divorce, despite everything that had happened between us, had just gone to war for me. "Margaret," he said gently, "I'm going to take care of Emma and Michael. They're at Linda's house right now, safe and calm. I'm going to pick them up after your surgery, take them to my place, and keep them until you're recovered. They'll be okay. You'll be okay. Just focus on getting through this surgery. Focus on surviving. We'll handle everything else." I tried to speak, tried to thank him, tried to say anything, but all that came out was a sob. The nurse was insistent now. "Everyone out. We're taking her to surgery right now." Linda grabbed Thomas's arm and pulled him toward the curtain. Robert stood frozen, looking like his entire world had just collapsed. As they wheeled me toward the operating room, the last thing I saw was Thomas standing in the hallway. His hand raised in a small wave, a reassuring smile on his face. And Robert, slumped against the wall, his head in his hands, everything he'd built on lies crumbling around him. And then the anesthesia took me and everything went black. I don't remember anything about the surgery itself. 4.5 hours of my life gone. 4.5 hours where surgeons cut me open, removed that monster that had been growing inside me, stopped the bleeding, stitched me back together. But while I was unconscious, while I was fighting for my life on that operating table, everything else was falling into place exactly as Thomas had promised. Linda told me later what happened. She stayed at the hospital the entire time, pacing the waiting room, calling Thomas with updates every hour. Thomas had left to go get the twins, just like he'd said he would. Robert had stayed in the hospital for about 30 minutes after I went into surgery. He'd sat in the waiting room, his head in his hands, looking like a broken man. Linda said people kept staring at him, probably because he looked so distraught, but she knew better. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about himself. He was worried about his job, his reputation, his mistress finding out he was still married, his comfortable life falling apart. Finally, he'd gotten up and left. Didn't say a word to Linda. Just walked out. Thomas had gone straight from the hospital to Linda's house, where Emma and Michael were waiting. Linda's husband had been watching them, trying to keep them calm, but both children were terrified. Emma had been crying on and off all morning. Michael had been rocking and humming, refusing to eat or speak. But when Thomas walked in, something shifted. Emma ran to him immediately, threw her arms around him, and sobbed into his chest. Michael, who rarely showed affection to anyone, actually made eye contact with Thomas and reached for his hand. Thomas told them the truth, in words they could understand. Your mom is in surgery right now. The doctors are helping her get better. She's going to be okay, but she needs to rest for a while. So you're going to come stay with me for a few days. Is that okay? Emma had nodded, still clinging to him. Michael had squeezed his hand tighter. Thomas took them back to his house, the house he'd lived in since the divorce. He'd prepared for them. He'd bought art supplies for Emma because Linda had told him Emma loved to draw. He'd bought sensory toys for Michael, weighted blankets, noise-canceling headphones, all the things Michael needed to feel safe. He'd set up 2 rooms for them, side by side, with night lights and comfortable beds. He'd stocked his kitchen with their favorite foods. He'd printed out their daily routines and taped them to the wall so they'd know what to expect. And then he'd done something that still makes me cry when I think about it. He'd video called them from his phone while they were in the car, before they got to his house, and he'd shown them around. Shown them where they'd sleep, where they'd eat, where they could play. He'd made it less scary, less unknown. By the time they got to his house, they were calm. Not happy, not okay, but calm. Protected. Meanwhile, Robert had gone home. He'd walked into our house expecting everything to be normal. Expecting to maybe feel a little guilty, but ultimately to continue his life as it had been. Instead, he found the locks changed, exactly as Thomas had promised. His clothes, his belongings, everything he owned, packed neatly in boxes on the front porch. There was an envelope taped to the front door with his name on it. Inside was a letter from a lawyer, divorce papers, and a restraining order preventing him from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of me or the children. But that wasn't all. Thomas had made good on his other threats too. Robert's boss had received an anonymous email that morning with documentation of Robert's affair with Jessica. Not just rumors but proof. Photos of them together. Credit card statements showing hotel rooms and expensive dinners charged to the company card. Everything. Jessica had received a visit from a private investigator Thomas had hired, who'd informed her that Robert was still very much married, and that his wife was currently in surgery while he was planning to meet with Jessica. By noon, Robert had been called into his boss's office. By 2 p.m. he'd been fired. Not just fired, but escorted out of the building by security. His desk already packed up. His company laptop and phone confiscated. By 4 p.m., Jessica had blocked him on every platform and sent him a scathing message calling him a liar and a cheat. By 6 p.m., Robert was sitting in a hotel room, alone, jobless, homeless, his entire life in shambles. And all of this happened while I was unconscious, while I was in recovery, while I had no idea that Thomas had systematically dismantled Robert's entire existence in less than 12 hours. The power had shifted completely. Robert, who'd held all the cards that morning, who'd felt so confident abandoning his family for a meeting and a mistress, had lost everything. His job, his home, his wife, his reputation, his future. Thomas had taken control of the situation with a precision and efficiency that was almost frightening. He'd protected the twins. He'd protected me. And he'd made sure Robert paid for what he'd done. When I finally woke up from surgery, groggy and confused and in pain, the first face I saw was Linda's. She was sitting next to my hospital bed, holding my hand, tears streaming down her face. "You're okay," she kept saying. "You made it. You're okay." "The twins," I mumbled, my mouth dry, my words slurred. "Where are the twins?" "They're safe," Linda assured me. "They're with Thomas. They're safe and happy and waiting to see you when you're strong enough." "Robert." Linda's face hardened. "Robert is gone. And he's never coming back." Over the next few hours, as the anesthesia wore off and I became more alert, Linda told me everything. Every single thing Thomas had done. Every phone call he'd made, every move he'd orchestrated, every piece of Robert's life he'd systematically destroyed. Part of me felt guilty. Part of me felt like it was too much, too harsh, too cruel. But then I remembered Robert's face when I'd begged him not to abandon us. I remembered his cold eyes, his dismissive voice, the way he'd called my children not his problem. And I didn't feel guilty anymore. He'd made his choices. He'd shown his true character. And now he was living with the consequences. Thomas had made sure of that. I stayed in the hospital for 5 days. 5 long, painful days of recovery, of learning to walk again, of managing pain, of slowly healing. Thomas came to visit me every single day. He'd bring the twins for an hour each afternoon, carefully monitored visits where they'd sit on my bed and tell me about their days at his house, show me the drawings Emma had made, tell me about the routines Thomas had established. They were okay. They were more than okay. They were thriving. Thomas had done what Robert never could. He'd stepped up. He'd created structure, safety, love. He'd shown them what it meant to be protected by someone who genuinely cared. On the 3rd day, when the twins weren't there, Thomas and I finally talked. Really talked. Why? Asked him. Why did you do all of this? We've been divorced for years. You didn't owe me anything. He was quiet for a long time, looking down at his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. Margaret, just because our marriage ended doesn't mean I stopped caring about you. Just because we couldn't make it work together doesn't mean I wanted to see you suffer. And when Emma called me, when I heard the fear in her voice, when I realized what Robert had done to you, to those innocent children, I couldn't stand by and do nothing. You destroyed his life, I said quietly. No, Thomas corrected. He destroyed his own life. I just made sure there were consequences for his actions. Men like Robert, they go through life hurting people and never paying for it. They abandon their families, betray their wives, neglect children, and somehow they always land on their feet. I just made sure that didn't happen this time. I started crying. I couldn't help it. The relief, the gratitude, the overwhelming emotion of everything that had happened. I'm sorry, I sobbed. I'm sorry for everything that went wrong between us. I'm sorry our marriage failed. I'm sorry I... Stop, Thomas said firmly, moving closer to my bed. Margaret, our marriage ended for legitimate reasons. We both know that. We grew apart. We wanted different things. That's okay. That's life. But that doesn't mean we can't still care about each other. That doesn't mean I won't protect you when you need it. The twins, I said. You barely know them and you just took them in, no questions asked. Thomas smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. Those kids are amazing, Margaret. Emma is so creative and smart. Michael is brilliant in his own way. Yes, they have challenges. Yes, they need extra support. But they're wonderful children. And anyone who can't see that is a fool. Robert was a fool. Over the next few days, Thomas and I talked more. About the past, about our marriage, about why it ended, about the years since. There was healing in those conversations. Closure we'd never really gotten when we divorced. We weren't getting back together. That wasn't what this was about. Too much had happened, too much time had passed. We'd both changed too much. But we were finding something else. Friendship. Understanding. A new kind of relationship built on mutual respect and genuine care. On the 5th day, my doctor came in and said I could go home. I was healing well, better than expected for someone my age. I'd need several more weeks of rest and recovery, but I could do that at home. Where is home? I asked, suddenly realizing I didn't actually know. The locks had been changed. Robert was gone. I didn't even know if I still had a house. Thomas had thought of that too, of course. Your house is yours, he explained. I had the locks changed to keep Robert out, but I have your new keys. Everything is cleaned, organized, ready for you. I've hired a home health aide to come stay with you for the next month to help with the twins and your recovery. Her name is Patricia, and she's wonderful. The twins have already met her and like her. I stared at him. You've thought of everything. I tried, he said simply. When I finally came home, Patricia was there waiting, exactly as Thomas had described. She was in her 50s, warm and competent, with experience in both elderly care and special needs children. She'd already learned Emma's and Michael's routines. The house felt different, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. Robert's things were gone, all traces of him removed. It was just my home now. Mine and the twins. Thomas stayed for the first few days, helping me get settled, making sure I was comfortable, making sure the twins transitioned smoothly back to their home routines. And then one evening he sat me down and showed me paperwork. The divorce from Robert had been filed. Robert had been served. He hadn't contested anything. How could he? The evidence against him was overwhelming. The abandonment, the affair, the neglect of the children. He'd signed everything without a fight. But there was more. "I want to talk to you about something," Thomas said carefully. "About Emma and Michael." My heart jumped. "What about them?" "I want to be in their lives, Margaret. Officially. Permanently. I'd like your permission to be their grandfather. Not legally, not in any way that complicates things, but just to be there for them. To be someone they can count on. To be their emergency contact, to come to their school events, to have them stay with me sometimes. They need stability. They need male role models who won't abandon them. I want to be that for them, if you'll let me." I started crying again. I seem to do nothing but cry these days. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, Thomas. They'd love that. I'd love that." Over the following weeks, as I slowly healed, a new normal emerged. Patricia helped during the day. Thomas came over several evenings a week for dinner, playing with the twins, reading them stories, being the steady, reliable presence they needed. Emma started calling him Grandpa Thomas. Michael started saving his best drawings to show him. I watched my ex-husband become the grandfather my children had never had, and something inside me healed that I didn't even know was broken. Robert tried to contact me once, about 3 weeks after the surgery. A long, rambling email full of apologies and excuses and requests for a second chance. He'd lost everything, he said. He was sorry, he said. He wanted to work things out, he said. I deleted it without responding. Thomas had taught me something important. Some people don't deserve second chances. Some people show you exactly who they are, and you need to believe them. One evening, about a month after the surgery, Thomas and I sat on my back porch while the twins played in the yard. Emma was drawing with sidewalk chalk. Michael was arranging sticks in careful patterns. "Do you regret it?" asked Thomas. "Everything you did to Robert?" He thought about it for a long time before answering. "No," he said finally. "I don't. He made his choices. He abandoned you when you were at your most vulnerable. He called those beautiful children not his problem. He lied, cheated, betrayed you in every possible way. He deserved what he got. And more importantly, you and the twins deserve to be protected. Sometimes in life you have to be willing to fight for the people you care about. That's what I did. I fought for you." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "Thank you. For everything. For showing up when no one else would. For protecting us. For being there. Always," he said simply. "From now on, Margaret, you're not alone. The twins aren't alone. I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere." It's been 6 months now since that day. 6 months since the surgery that changed everything. I'm fully recovered now. Physically, at least. The scar on my abdomen is healing, fading to a thin white line. The pain is gone. I'm stronger than I've been in years. Emotionally, I'm still healing. I don't think you ever fully recover from the kind of betrayal Robert inflicted. The wounds run too deep. But I'm getting there day by day, with the help of a good therapist and the support of people who genuinely care about me. The divorce is final. Robert is completely out of our lives. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he's working at a different company now, in a lower position, making less money. That he's living in a small apartment alone. That Jessica won't speak to him and has since gotten engaged to someone else. Part of me feels sorry for him. But only a very small part. Mostly I feel nothing. He's a stranger to me now, someone I used to know, someone who showed me his true character when it mattered most. Emma and Michael are thriving. Emma's anxiety has actually improved since Robert left. She's more confident, more secure. Michael has started speaking more, making more eye contact, showing more emotion. Turns out they'd both been walking on eggshells around Robert, trying not to be too much trouble, trying not to be too much work. Now they can just be themselves. And they're beautiful. Thomas is a permanent fixture in our lives now. He comes over 3 or 4 times a week. takes the twins on outings on weekends, attends every school event, every therapy session, every doctor's appointment. He's the grandfather they never had, the father figure they desperately needed. He and I aren't together romantically. We've both been very clear about that. We're friends, partners in raising these children, co-grandparents in a way. Our relationship now is healthier than it ever was when we were married, probably because there's no romantic pressure, no expectations beyond mutual respect and care. Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I'd never gotten sick, if I'd never needed that surgery, if Robert had never shown his true colors. Would I have stayed with him for years, slowly dying inside, letting him make my children feel worthless? Would I have wasted more of my precious time on a man who didn't deserve it? I'm almost grateful, in a twisted way, that the crisis happened, because it forced everything into the light. It forced people to show who they really were. And it brought Thomas back into my life in a way I never expected. I've learned so much from this experience. About trust, about character, about the difference between the person someone pretends to be and who they really are when the chips are down. I've learned that you can't predict how people will react in a crisis. The person you think will be there might abandon you. And the person you never expected might show up and save you. I've learned that age doesn't matter when it comes to being a parent. I may be 67, but I'm exactly the mother Emma and Michael need. And Thomas, at 70, is exactly the grandfather they need. I've learned that family isn't always blood. It's not always the person you're married to. It's the people who show up, the people who fight for you, the people who love your children as their own without being asked. I've learned that betrayal hurts, but it also teaches. It shows you what you will and won't tolerate. It shows you your own strength. It shows you who you really are when everything is stripped away. Most importantly, I've learned that sometimes the people you trust the most are the first to abandon you. But sometimes the people you least expect will be the ones to save you. Robert taught me what betrayal looks like, what selfishness looks like, what cowardice looks like. Thomas taught me what real strength looks like, what real love looks like, what real family looks like. That day, lying in that hospital bed, terrified and alone, begging my husband not to abandon us, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd lost everything. I thought I'd made terrible choices and would pay for them forever. But I was wrong. That day wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a new chapter. Better chapter. A chapter where I'm surrounded by people who genuinely love me, who show up for me, who value me and my children. That day, I learned that sometimes you have to lose everything to realize what actually matters. You have to be abandoned to realize who will actually stay. You have to hit rock bottom to find out who will reach down and pull you back up. I look at Emma and Michael now, happy and secure and loved. And I know I made the right choice in letting Robert go. I know Thomas made the right choice in fighting for us. I know that everything that happened, as painful as it was, led us to exactly where we needed to be. My name is Margaret. I'm 67 years old. And the day my husband refused to care for my twins while I was being taken into surgery was the day my heart completely broke. But it was also the day I learned what real love looks like, what real family looks like, what real strength looks like. And for that, I'll be forever grateful. Because sometimes, the worst moments of our lives lead us to the best parts of ourselves. Sometimes betrayal opens the door to something better. Sometimes the people who abandon us make room for the people who will truly be there. That's what I want you to remember from my story. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. When someone abandons you in your darkest moment, let them go. And when someone unexpected shows up to save you, let them in. Life is too short to waste on people who don't value you. Life is too precious to spend it with people who see you and your children as problems to be avoided rather than blessings to be cherished. I thought I knew what love was. I thought I knew what marriage meant. I thought I knew what family looked like. I was wrong about all of it. But now I know. And I'll never settle for less again. Neither should you.